Greetings! Today at my Focus RS I am installing the PCV side catch can from Radium Engineering and a little something extra from Sico Developments. Alright then, this is our kit that we are installing today, and this install is kind of more of a two-part install. We're doing two different products, technically speaking. So the main thing is the Radium Engineering PCV catch can system, but the other thing that we are doing is this. This is the Sico Developments PCV plate. Now, you may know already that I have the Mountain PCV plate already installed, but I am replacing it with this one for a very good reason. The Mountain is designed to utilize the stock PCV valve, which is okay for connecting to the stock system, and it would work with this catch can setup. But the Sico Developments plate, you can spec it with an uprated valve already installed, ready to go in the plate already, which means that all we have to do is to connect up directly into this. It's just going to make installation that little bit easier. We don't have to reuse the stock plastic valve, which has been known to be a bit leaky, whereas this is nice and solid and will be much more reliable, especially when you are pushing a bit more boost over stock, which we are. The Sico Developments has two ports, so you can spec it just without one of the valves, just with two ports, and similarly the Mountain has two ports in addition to a hole that you use the stock valve on, and one is around here I think, and the other one is up here. The idea, if you want to add a catch can to the Mountain, would be that you take a feed from the lower down part, go through the catch can, and then come back in right where it then connects into the back of the intake manifold. That is a nice idea with the Mountain, but it isn't quite so easy in practice because the two ports on either side of the Mountain are just blocked off, much like this one is right here. Mountain then don't provide any connections, so you have to go and provide them yourself. Those connections, they don't come with the catch can system. The catch can system is designed to either utilize a stock or a valve such as this. I do believe that Radium sell them, but they're quite hard to get, especially in the UK. So as you can see, the Mountain would be usable, but it would be quite an awkward, difficult thing to really set up. And that is why we're replacing it with the Sico Developments plate, which I have to say is beautifully machined. It's very light, made out of aerospace grade aluminium. This is ready to go apart from the gasket, which we need to grab off the Mountain. And then we have our catch can, which is very similar obviously to the CCV catch can that we have in place already. In fact, the can itself is literally the same. We just have some slightly different connections with regards to these being right angles, another couple of subtle differences with regards to how we connect everything up. And then the bracket is a little bit bigger with these threaded parts, just to conveniently and properly be located in the engine bay. Obviously then we need to get under the bonnet to do the install, but we can do a few things here in preparation prior to beginning the install. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to cut our rubber tubing. We basically get one length of tubing that we have to cut in half, so it doesn't have to be super accurate, just roughly halfway, and then we'll cut. There we go. We have our two connections here. The bits that screw here are the bits that screw onto our two connections, which are going to be in the can, and then these both have barbed sections. These barbed sections are going to go in one on each piece of pipe. So we'll get to that in a minute. Before we do that, we can get our ports screwed into our catch can. So first off, I'm going to do the side port, and this very simply, there's only one place for this to go, and that's in the side. Now before we just screw that in there, we are told to use a little bit of light oil and lubricate that O-ring. So just got a little bit of light oil on my finger, and then we can just screw that in. Okie dokie, then for tightening this up, you can either use a big socket like this one, or you can use whatever like variable wrench that you like. In terms of size, it's in millimeters, it's about 25, which is quite large and awkward to find one so big. And I am going to cover it with paper because it is aluminium and it can potentially get damaged. So this is a 26mm socket, and then with a few layers of paper it makes it a pretty good size. So I can feel that getting tight now. So there we go, that is our side port installed. Next up then, the top port. Now this is a banjo connection. So what we have is we have our banjo bolt here, then we have this section, and we have two washers. So we need to have a washer either side of this, and then hopefully you can see here that this is closer to this edge than it is to this edge, and we want to have this pointing up, so we want this at the highest possible location. So way we're going to go then is washer, then this, then that goes on like so, then our second washer, and then we can get this screwed into the top of the can. So I'm just going to have that hand tight with my fingers in for now, because once we get this in the car, we're probably going to want to adjust this around a bit before we get it into its final position. And then once it is in its final position and we're all connected up, then we need to use a very large socket and a torque wrench, and we're going to torque that down. As you may be able to see, it's written on top, torque 25 foot-pounds. But for now, that is the catch can itself prepped, so we can just set this to the side and we can move on to our rubber tubing. Alright, moving on then to our two right-angled sections which connect into our two bits of pipe. So you might think, well, that can just push in, and yes, kind of, but this piping is pretty tight. Certainly if it's anything like the CCV side rubber tubing, which it looks broadly similar to, this is exceptionally difficult to get all the way in. Less so perhaps on the metal connections that we are provided with, but certainly on the plastic ones that we had to reuse the last time, it was very, very difficult, and there was a big fear of breaking them. It was suggested to me to not only lubricate the barbs like I was doing the last time, but still had difficulty, but to heat up this section of pipe just to make it a little bit more bendy, a little bit more malleable, a bit easier to get pushed in there without doing any damage. So I've got my heat gun here, I'm going to put it on, I'm going to warm up the end. Then I'm going to get a bit of light oil on here, and then hopefully that should go on there nice and easy. Get a little bit of oil on our barbs to just kind of lube them up a bit. Okay, and hopefully, oh yes, look at that, like a glove. So that made that much easier, and yeah, definitely highly recommend doing that. It just slid right on there. So then we can repeat the exact same process for the other one. Really nice and easy to get that in there with the heat and the oil combined. So great. Now once they cool down, that rubber will sort of like crimp in there, and we don't need clamps on these two ends, which is pretty sweet. So we can just leave those to the side to cool down. Alright then, being that we have our new plate with our pre-installed valve, which we're going to be connecting one of our rubber tubes in here, making that connection right here is something that we can do in advance as well as this other stuff that we've already done. It's suggested that in the car, this is pointing towards the rear, so we have our side port, and then approximately at a right angle we have our top port, and the top port is what connects into our plate. So that is obviously going to be like this. We want to have our right angle sort of like sideways on like this to our port here, and then we'll get this connected in. And to do that, I'm going to do the same process, heat it up, since that worked so well for those connections. Then we're going to grab one of our little spring clamps. We need some pliers for this just to squeeze the ends together. Get this over the end of the rubber tubing, then push the tubing onto the valve, then manipulate the spring valve on top of that to secure it in place. First thing I'll do, since I've got this glove on, is another tiny little dab of oil. Just going to get that on this single barb that we have here on our valve. So just get that around there. So then I can get rid of this glove. Alright then, heat gun, heat up the other end of our rubber tubing. So first thing to do is to grab one of our spring clamps and to push the two sides together. Alright. So then we'll get that over the top of the rubber piping. And then we'll get our plate and we'll push that on. Slides on like a glove. Whenever that bends upwards, then we are pointing sideways. At the end of the day, we can come back and adjust it later, but for now, I would say that's pretty good. With that nicely on there now, we can position our clamp. So once again, just pushing these two teeth together and getting it down to the bottom of the rubbery bit. There we have it. So that is that end completely done. At this point, we have pretty much done all that we can in preparation. So now I need to get under the bonnet. All right, here we are in the engine bay. And if I sort of get down in, you can kind of see that M logo. That is our current Mountain PCV plate that we are replacing with our new Sico development plate. And then it's gonna be sort of around here where the new catch can is going to go. First thing we always can do is press this little tab and give it a jiggle, removing that electrical connection. Then we have the evap, so it's kind of like this grey thing down here. If I move this electrical connection out of the way, see that grey thing? This is what we need to first release. So to unlock this, it's like a little grey like arch type of thing which goes over the top and clips in. So we just have to pry open the two little legs. So you can just see there those little legs. Now that we have it out, it's a bit easier because it's quite a tight space to show you on camera. You can just, all you have to do is just pry these legs apart and then it just clips right off. So then at this point we do need to do something else because there's a little like push tab on the other side. It's also grey and we need to push that in, and then once we push that in, then we can just slide this right off. If you're on the stock intake manifold, then the remainder of this is on like little plastic posts, so you will need to pop that off. But being on this, I am just tied in to this cable up here, so I don't have to worry about that. Now I'm going to feed this electrical cable up through the intake manifold because that's just where I had it cable tied down there, so I had to remove the cable tie in order to get that out. But yeah, that is now all of that released. If you are on stock intake manifold, you've got two plastic things that look like that are like connected in the back that you'll need to slide off. They are on a little bit tight, so you just kind of have to go for it. Next thing then are bolts that connect us to the cylinder head. So we have one in there, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they require a 10mm socket, and you will need some degree of extension just to get in these spaces and down in there, etc. So yeah, 10mm and extension. Alright, next, the clamp that is holding our boost pipe on. So for that we need a 7mm wrench. Next will be the electrical connection to the throttle body motor. There's a little red tab which needs to be clicked outwards. Then you press another tab in the middle and then it should just slide right off. The last thing is actually the PCV connection itself, which is right there. So all we really need to do is, there's a couple of rough sides to that, and that is where you press in and then it should just come off. So pressing in. Alright, now we should be ready just to pull upwards, get the hose off the bottom of the throttle body. There we go. Alright, that is us out. That is that little electrical connection with the red tab. So you pull that backwards, press it in, and then it comes out. I'm just going to stuff the hose pipe with some paper, but before I do, you can see there's like a sort of a film of oil in there, which is the exact reason why we are doing this today. So I'll literally just like stuff that in there, stop any dust getting in. Then I'm going to tape up the ports on the cylinder head also to stop any dust and dirt getting in whilst we are completing this job. Alright, in the garage with our intake manifold and our throttle body, again you can see signs of oil in here, which is not a good thing, obviously. So it's in there, and you can see it a bit around our ports as well, unsurprisingly, since it's being sucked right up through that way. So yeah, I'm going to clean off all of this oil just in preparation for reinstallation. But now, the next part is to get our old PCV plate off. Alright, now we need an 8mm socket, and I'm going to use a small extension just for ease, and remove all of the M6 bolts that go all the way around our plate. I believe there are 8 of them. Okay, now we should be able to carefully remove the plate. And there we go. The mounting design, you can see, is a bit different to the stock design. It has this enclosed labyrinth, so oil will come in down here, and then it's forced to go in here and come out down there, and then it will come out. And you can see at the sides there and there are the 2 blocked off ports I was talking about earlier, where you could attach a separate catch can if you wanted, but like I was saying, mounting don't make it easy for you in terms of getting fixings for these. But anyway, like we were saying earlier, we are going with the Sico development solution. Look at them side by side, you know, roughly they're the same size, obviously they have the same connections, etc. But the Sico has its baffle, it kind of goes into the side of the block, whereas the mounting sits right on the surface of the block, and then it has all of its gubbins sitting outwards. So we will actually save a little bit of space in the engine bay, which doesn't really matter that much, but it's still kind of cool with the Sico Developments plate. Okay, to get this off then, we have a little hex bolt just sort of clamping it down onto the plate. So we use a 4mm Allen key. And then once that comes out, then our little clamp comes off, and then this should just, yep, lift right out. One other thing we need to get from our stock, or indeed in this case our mounting plate, is the gasket that goes out around here. So we should be able to just get it started and then carefully remove. So this we are going to transplant into our Sico Developments plate. So I have this sitting here in the way that it was removed so that I know what way to go, but you know, the way this gasket is shaped, it really can only go in one way into the groove that you see we have here on our Sico Developments plate. So literally just pushing this into that groove. Alright, there we go, gasket in. Next is a little bit of a repeat from whenever we were doing our prep before, in terms of I'm going to use my heat gun, and what I need to do is I need to heat around this area here where the barb of the plastic connector that goes onto the back of the intake manifold is. If your PCV setup is fully stock, or if you're going to use the mounting plate, for example, but without having to use its additional ports, you will need to heat gun this bit off as well, because you'll have to reuse this. But we don't need to bother with that because of our Sico Developments plate. Right, next then is the same process that we used before for our rubber tubing. Gonna heat it up a bit at the end. Well, I don't even need to lube this up because it's already got a little bit of oil still on it. In terms of orientation for the direction that we want this clip to be pointed in, basically I think it should be pointing in the same direction as our angled connector here, because this is going to go into the side port of the catch can. That's going to be pointing that way, and this then will connect into the rear of the intake manifold, so they're going to be both pointing in the same direction. Before we do this, we want to put the second spring clamp over this, because we do need to clamp this side down. So now we can heat this up, get this loosened a bit, and then insert the barb, and it should be nice and easy. So I'll just twist this while we're still hot, just to get our orientation. Ow, quite hot. Ow. Alright, there we go. That is pretty good. So now we just need to move our little clamp into position, and then that is this pipe work done. Alright, now is a good time to get our bracket sorted out. So the first thing, we want to remove this clip that is, you see this blue bit? It's like clamped onto that kind of. We just need to pry that off of there first. Alright, next where we have this screw right here, which is like on the little bracket for the bonnet release. So this is our bracket, and you can see we have 3 connections. So this hole right here is what that screw that we just removed is going to go back into, right here. And then we have these 2 threaded sections in the bracket. Radium do provide 2 screws then that go into these. Now what we want to do is we want to position this underneath this blue tab that we just revealed whenever we popped this thing off. So under here then there is another one which is perpendicular to that one. It's maybe hard to see, but it's like right at the end of my hand there, just underneath this pipe. They do suggest that you take this pipe off, but I really don't think you need to bother. So when we're doing this, we want the plate to be above our coolant line. So like we were saying, get those underneath. And then this one over here, we want that to be like behind or towards us. So these little screws that Radium provide are a 4mm hex. And then we can get our screw in here. Now just to tidy up, you will remember that we unclipped this thing from the coolant line that was securing it to this bit of bodywork right here. So obviously now we are using that, but Radium provide a little bit of it. There's a little like small tab here that we can just click that right into. There we go, nice reassuring click. There we go, that is that done. Alright, we're ready to install our catch can onto the bracket. There are 4 screw holes, and we are of course provided with the 4 screws from Radium. So whenever we are installing these, they require a 3mm Allen wrench, and before we get them in, we're going to put a little bit of Loctite blue on the threads just to keep them nicely in place and not wriggling out under vibration. Alright, nice. That is our catch can securely in the bracket. It's a nice snug fit, looks really well. You'll have noticed that I had to remove this to get that to fit under there. It's something I didn't really think about, but then it's, you know, it's a 2-second job just to screw it back in at this point. Next stage then is to get our Sico Developments PCV plate bolted into place using the original hardware. So we just carefully manipulate it into place, and then once we're underneath all these bits and bobs, should just slot right in there. Nice. So then we just get our little bolts. Alright, there we go. That is all of our little bolts back in just with my hand. So now we need to torque those down, and we need to torque those to 12 Newton meters each. We are then automatically ready with our first connection to our catch can. Now this one that goes into the PCV valve on the PCV plate goes into the top port of the catch can. So we want to just manipulate that and then screw that on like so. Okay, to fully tighten that up, I am going to wrap a little bit of paper around it, kind of like we did before, and then I will get my wrench and just give that a bit of a tighten to make sure that it's on there nicely. Then we can grab our other connection, which is going to go into our intake manifold, right into the side port. Alright, then we have that nicely on there. It's nice and tight and it is angled down. This one is still loose, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to position it where I want it, which is like that, like a right angle, and then we'll tighten this down and torque to the 25 foot-pounds. Alright, looking absolutely lovely, and of course we are now ready to get everything that we removed earlier back into place. So basically get our intake manifold back into position, get it in down here, connect this into the PCV connection at the back, plug in the throttle body motor, just the exact reverse of what we did earlier. So I'm going to go for the electrical connection first to the throttle body. Okay, so I've got it into the hose, but I don't have the clamp tightened down just yet. I'll tighten it down once we are in a better position with our manifold. So at this point, I'm going to get it bolted onto the cylinder head. If you're running the stock manifold, just blast right away. I am, of course, running the mountain manifold, so I have this phenolic spacer, and then I have this other Sico development spacer as well to get in place. But whatever setup you have, just make sure that all of your gaskets are appropriately located where they are meant to be located, and yeah, then we'll just position it up and use the original hardware and get it tightened down. Alright then, now we got to torque those bolts down, and we're going to do them to 22 foot-pounds, which is equivalent to 29.8 Newton meters. We're going to start in the middle and then work out. So the middle, then one side, then the other side, then the far out one, and then the other side. So now I'm going to sort out the clamp to make sure that it's in the correct position and properly secured on the hose that connects to the throttle body. Alright, cool. The next thing then is the evap. So we literally just need to push that on top of the connection right there, all the way in, and then we get our little clip and we just clip that on the bottom to lock it in place. So it can only go on one way and then clicks into place. Alright then, this electrical connection from earlier, so I think it's nice and neat to route it underneath the manifold whenever you have the mount set up. So we just get it around all that stuff and then just simply push it in to plug it in. There we go. Last part then is to connect our PCV connection that is now coming from our catch can into the back of the intake manifold, so you can see it there. So we just line it up and push it on and it should click into place. Oh, yes, there we go. Nice reassuring click. So yeah, that's it then. Catch can is installed. You can see our rubber piping is nice and neat going down and underneath where it is going, and yeah, it just looks really nice in the engine bay, especially in conjunction with the other one like we were talking about earlier. And yeah, that is us. Installation complete. Well, there we go, that is the installation finished on our new Radium Engineering catch can PCV side, and indeed our Sico Developments PCV plate. And it must be said that they work in harmony together. The installation was very straightforward, but really wasn't much hassle at all. And the Sico Developments PCV plate with that pre-installed valve just makes it that bit easier, so that's absolutely awesome. It's lightweight, it looks good, everything looks good and is lightweight and is very nicely connected in there, and it just spruces up the engine bay. It fills that area in the engine bay that was a bit blank beforehand, so that's pretty cool. It works well with the other catch can from Radium that we have, so all is good. And of course we are going to catch a decent bit of oil in that can, so I'll monitor that over the coming couple of thousand miles or so, and I'll report back to you. So I think that is sweet. I hope you do too. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe for more content to come very, very soon. Thank you once again. Goodbye.